on then, Jono, tell us about the Why We Sleep. You've just read through that.
Yeah, so this is a book, Why We Sleep, by Matthew Walker. And yeah, I was just pretty shocked because I'm obviously not getting enough sleep, to be honest, John. So I'm getting probably on average between 6 and 7, which basically over a 10-day period, if you're doing that. So obviously with the Swiss school system, that's what I'm blaming the whole thing on, right? It's nothing to do with anything else, not too much work. Swiss school system, the oldest, Ben, he's 13. They have to be in school by 7:15 every morning, right? So, so that kind of sets the clock at me getting up at least at 5:30 if I kind of want to have a little bit of peace and quiet before the chaos starts. So, so that's it. So apparently, if you have that for 10 days, Yadid, I think you were saying, it's the equivalent of all-nighter, and it leads to certain other things which I need to be careful of, I guess.
Yeah, so if you do that routinely, so over a week, then you're really demolishing your immune system, and you're more than doubling your risk for cancer. And insufficient sleep in general is a very important factor in determining whether or not you'll develop Alzheimer in later age. So I'd say it's important to sleep.
So all you guys are okay. So you just have to look at me in my old age. Look after me in my old age.
For those, for those that have just joined us, who might be slightly confused, that's not actually. This is just the preamble. This is just the warm up. But I think we've got everybody in now. I think if we're ready, we'll start, shall we? Everyone happy? So welcome to the fourth edition of the Hospitality Resilience Series. My name is John Hazan from Atlas Coaching, and with me are co-host Jonathan Humphreys from HoCoSo and Chris Mumford from HoCoSo and Service Leadership. Before I hand over to Chris, who will set the context for today's topic, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us today, especially if you're joining us for the first time. We're delighted you can make it. We encourage you to take part, to send questions in through the Q&A function, and then we will pose those to Yadid, today's guest speaker. Please note the session is being recorded and will appear in full, as well as a podcast and an article on the Hospitality Resilience Series website soon after the session. Dr. Lucy Ryan referred to resilience as having 5 segments: body, mind, heart, soul, and connection. And in our earlier sessions, we've explored some of those, looking at adaptability, community, nutrition, and intention. And today we return to the body and the importance of sleep. So at that point, to tell us a little bit more about this fascinating and crucial area of our resilience, I will hand over to Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. So yes, exactly. Why are we talking about sleep? I mean, as John says, we kind of all know it's important. And for those of us in hospitality, we actually spend an awful lot of time and resources and money on making sure our guests sleep well. I mean, we sell sleep in essence. So, sleep is something we're all in hospitality familiar with, but our session really is about the self, and as leaders, in order to best support our businesses and our teams, we need to be looking after ourselves. And as John says, on previous sessions, we've looked at physical health and nutrition, exercise, and all of these things that we know we should be doing to keep ourselves in best shape. And sleep is a crucial part of that in order to recover, regenerate, and to foster and build our resilience. And it also, interestingly, you can find some interesting studies out there about the impact on others that a lack of sleep can have in a leadership capacity. So, studies have shown that those leaders who are not getting sufficient or good enough quality sleep, that's impacting their judgment, it's impairing creativity, it's worsening relationships, and it's having a negative impact on their ability to inspire and motivate their teams. So, it is one of those important kind of pieces of the arsenal of a leader to be able to, be well in themselves, and sleep is an important constituent of that. So great to have Yadid with us, and we can really, I'm looking forward to really getting into what constitutes good sleep and how we can obtain it. So Jonathan, over to you with an intro to Yadid.
Thank you very much, Chris. It is my absolute pleasure today to introduce Yadid Eisenberg. And Yadid and I go back to 2006, 2008. We studied at Kellogg School of Management together. And we met in Tel Aviv, Chicago, Frankfurt, I think maybe even Miami, if I'm not mistaken. I always found Yadid to have an extremely quick mind. He's very curious, thoughtful, full of energy, and undoubtedly an entrepreneurial spirit. In 2014, Yadid was co-founder and CTO of the Sync project, which is, in terms of a catchline, developing music as precision medicine. Followed by very successful fundraising, it was eventually acquired by Bose Corporation in 2018. Yadid is now global head of sleep at Bose Corporation. He also has a PhD from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is also one of the major shareholders of Bose Corporation. So Bose is a company which is rooted in cutting edge research, which is one of the reasons the founder, Amar Bose, donated the company to this particular institution. Yadid has over 20 years experience of innovating, creating, building and scaling consumer products and technology platforms. His full CV is available on the website, and you'll see a lot written about him in the media. At MIT Media Lab, he was quoted when speaking to graduates, "Don't let anyone get in the way of your passion." And he, I'm sure you'll see today, is an extremely passionate person, extremely creative, and it's an absolute pleasure to have him on this particular show. Today's session will be an exploration into the role of technology in health and also the opportunities which exist for us to take advantage of alternative solutions in the future. So without further ado and with absolute pleasure, I will now hand over to Yadid Eisenberg. Thank you, Yadid.
Great. Thank you for the kind introduction. So before we start, I'd like just to maybe run a poll to get a sense of how much people are sleeping and what their quality of sleep is like. So if you could answer these two questions, how would you rate your average quality of sleep over the last week? And on average, how many hours a night did you sleep last week? Okay.
Are we waiting for the results? So maybe we start. Do you want to start with the presentation you did?
Yeah, let's
the results at the end.
Okay, great. So let me just share my screen. I guess everyone knows that sleep is important, but let's get a bit into why it's important and how we can improve our sleep. So firstly, this is, I think this slide is very important. It portrays the grim state of affairs of sleep in the US particularly. And so 50 to 70 million Americans suffer from sleep disorders or sleep deprivation. That's an astounding number. And it's estimated that Americans spend over $41 billion on sleep aids. And 60 million Americans take sleep medications every year. Now, again, the problem with that is that sleep aids are plentiful, they're cheap, and so they're a very easy solution to the problem. But actually, research suggests that sleep medication doesn't really improve your sleep. It knocks you out, but the quality of sleep is really in question here. Now, if those in Europe who thought they had it better, then you're sorely mistaken. This is research that shows the percentage of older adults who report sleep problems. And you can see that the leads here are Poland, Hungary, Germany, France, and Spain. Leads not in a good sense, leading in sleep disorders, right? 31% of adults in Poland have sleep disorders. So same problem in Europe as well. So I'd argue this is a global pandemic. And so what are why do we care, right? Why is insomnia or sleep problems so important to all of us? Well, firstly, it increased the risks for various medical conditions, things like stroke, asthma attacks, seizures, weakened immune system, inflammation, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, you name it, right? It's a swath of conditions that are associated with insomnia. Second, it increases the risk for mental health issues. So things like anxiety, confusion, frustration, depression. It increases the risk for accidents because of issues in judgment, lack of focus, memory problems. All of those increase the risk for accidents. And then finally, in general, shortened life expectancy. In a recent study that looked at persistent insomnia and mortality, they found that those with persistent insomnia had a 97% increased risk of death. That's really significant. So obviously, very, very crucial implications on our health. But it's not just our health, but also our economy, which is suffering. And this is a study that was done by the Rand Corporation, and it shows the cost of insufficient sleep across 5 OECD countries. And if we look at the US, the cost of insufficient sleep is $411 billion a year. That's nearly 2.3% of the GDP. That's astounding. The UK, $50 billion, Germany, 60, and Japan, $138 billion, nearly 3% of the GDP. That's an astounding figure. So obviously, it's not just our health, but also our economy, which is suffering because we just do not sleep enough. So let's look at the biology. What determines really when we fall asleep, when we wake up? There are 2 internal biological mechanisms that are responsible for that. One is what's called the sleep-wake homeostasis, which keeps track of your need for sleep. So it reminds the body to sleep after a certain time, and it regulates your sleep intensity. So if you didn't sleep the night before, then obviously that sleep drive gets stronger every hour, and you are awake, and it causes you to sleep longer. So that's the first mechanism. The second, which is depicted in the slide, is the circadian cycle. And the circadian cycle is responsible for directing a wide variety of functions in the body, from daily fluctuations in your wakefulness to body temperature to metabolism and release of hormones. And they're tied to 24-hour cycle, which is tied to your body clock. And what's really interesting is that your circadian cycle is impacted by environmental factors, mainly by light and by temperature. So those are really important to keep this regular circadian cycle, and we'll talk a bit about how that's done. So now that you've fallen asleep, what really happens in your body? There are 4 stages. There is non-REM stage 1, which is the state that you transition from wakefulness to sleep, and it lasts about 5 to 10 minutes. Then there is non-REM stage 2, where your body temperature drops and your heart rate starts to slow, and that lasts between 10 to 25 minutes. And then there is stage 3, which is called deep sleep as well, or slow wave sleep. Your muscles relax, your blood pressure drops, your breathing rate drops. And that's when the deepest sleep occurs. And so if someone wakes you up when you're in that state, you awake to be really groggy. It's very difficult to wake you up. It lasts approximately 20 to 4 minutes. And then we go into REM sleep, where the brain becomes much more active. We dream in this state, and our body actually becomes immobilized. Our hands and legs, they don't move. Our eyes move rapidly. That's why it's called REM, rapid eye movement. And this is about 20 to 25% of our sleep at night is REM. Now, throughout the night, we transition in and out of these stages, right? So there are cycles and roughly 4 or 5 cycles a night of moving between stage 2, stage 3, and REM. What's important is that in a non-REM sleep, the benefits are that in these stages, the bones and the muscles are built. There's repair and regeneration of tissues, and overall strengthening of the immune system. That happens in the non-REM stages. In the REM stages, we have stimulation of the areas of the brain that are associated with learning, with memory consolidation, and increased production of proteins. So each of these stages is equally important for various reasons, and both of the REM and the non-REM, they decline with age. Let's see, what can we do to improve the quality of our sleep, right? This is sleep hygiene. So let's start with the do's. The first is have a sleep schedule. Our body likes regularity. Humans like regularity. So go to sleep at a regular time and try and wake up at the regular time, even on weekends. People tend to sleep in on weekends. That's bad because it may throw off your circadian cycle. Number two is clear your mind before bed. Stress is not good for sleep. I'll repeat this throughout the presentation. So do not go into bed when you're worrying about life's problems and your job and any other issues you have. Try and clear your mind before going to bed. That's very important. And the third is create a good sleep environment in terms of temperature, in terms of lighting, in terms of have a comfortable pillow. Smells are very important when falling asleep. All of those are really important. So if you can create a good sleep environment, that will promote better sleep. Exercise every day. When you exercise, you just naturally become tired, and then at the end of the day, it's easier to fall asleep. Relax, always good, regardless of sleep. See your healthcare provider if you're having problems falling asleep. So yes, if you can't fall asleep from time to time, that's fine. But if this becomes chronic and lasts for more than a few weeks, then there may be an underlying clinical condition, and it's best to talk to your doctor about it. And then finally, seek out sun early in the day. As I said before, the circadian cycle is impacted by light and is impacted by temperature. So it's really important that in the morning, you go outside, you get the sun. That really regulates your circadian cycle. That's also very important when you travel to a different time zone. So if you land somewhere and it's morning, it's really important to be outside and not go straight to your hotel and climb into bed. And that will help regulate your circadian cycle and adapt it to the new time zone. Now,
maybe we could just explore light as a topic throughout, because you've mentioned light several times now. The circadian cycle, you've talked about sun early in the day. Why sun early in the day rather than later in the day? I guess kind of first question, benefits, health benefits, etc. The second, regarding lighting, about having the right kind of light when you're ready to go to sleep, and also the use of electronics, whether they're iPads, phones, TVs, and the impact that has on us in kind of our behavior, or us, thinking about the light in a particular way that may be preventing us from sleeping.
First, why light in the morning and not in the evening? So if you think about it, what does a day look like on Earth? Typically, start with a lot of sunlight, high temperature, and as the day progresses, you get less and less light as the sun sets, right? And temperature goes down. Now, our circadian cycle is adapted to that. It's not by chance that it's a 24-hour cycle. It's adapted to the cycle of the Earth. And so since that's what our circadian cycle is cued to, the fact that when there's a lot of light, it's the kind of beginning of the day, there's a lot of energy, there's specific hormones that are secreted. And then as the day progresses, it's the end of the day, less light, colder temperature, and you become sleepy. So if you introduce light late in the day, that obviously confuses your body into thinking that actually now we're starting the day. Right now, it doesn't happen if you have one day of a bit of light in the afternoon. But I mean, over time, you disrupt the circadian cycle. Now, as far as what types of light, let's talk about electronic devices in the evening. So in general, because of what I just said about light, these electronic devices like tablets, like phones, like computers, they all emit light. And obviously having them late in the day is, again, cues your body that it's not nighttime. And specifically, the blue light is the part that is most problematic. And so if you do use a computer or your phone, there are applications that filter the blue light. And that's really important. I have on my phone and my laptop, I have something that reduces the blue light. You get this kind of yellow hue, looks very, I don't know, 70s all the time, but that's great. I love the 70s. And another tip is there are special lens for glasses that also filter out blue light. So both of those can be, if you must have your electronics, that's okay, but take care of the blue light.
Yadid, before we move on, we've had a great question come in from Maria along these same lines. Maria asks about clearing your mind before bed. Is there any technique or devices or whatever it might be that can help calm you down before you close your eyes and go to sleep? What would you recommend towards that?
Oh, there's a wide variety of techniques. Today, what's I'd say very popular is mindfulness and meditation pre-sleep. There are several applications that you can use that help you exercise mindfulness and develop your technique. So I'd say those are very important. Audio, relaxing audio is another option. Again, there's specific sounds that can, we're all different, right? So for some of us, it can be classical music that will help relax us, but for others, it will be just something like white noise or something very drony that will keep our minds off of negative thoughts. Those are the techniques you can use. But again, if it becomes something which is more than a few times a week, but becomes a problem, then I go to a healthcare provider, and we'll talk about what the healthcare provider might prescribe or recommend.
Yadid, could I just, while we're on this slide, just pick up on a couple of things? One is the nap concept. So napping, right, which in the last few years has become this concept of the power nap. And offices creating these little kind of alcoves and cubicles for people to go and have that power nap and so forth. So where does a power nap become a long nap? And then how does that play into the circadian cycle? And I noted, I'm also thinking culturally, places like Spain, which had the siesta, looking at your circadian cycle, that siesta time is right during kind of peak productivity time. So, can you maybe talk to those two things? And there's a siesta, a nap, what's the benefit of napping?
The science says several things, and of course, because it's science, then every time there's a new research paper, things change. But I think what's today, the realization is that it's okay to nap. What's recommended is no more than 20 minutes, so that it's a true power nap. The problem that if you nap for longer and you start actually sleeping and going into deep sleep, then you'll wake up feeling really groggy. And we talked about this. Your body is waiting to complete the sleep stages, and you're disrupting that. And so that's number one. Number two is if you get a really good long afternoon nap, then you'll be less tired at night. And again, that has implications. But I want to say there's the other side. And actually, throughout history, there's been a history of what's called biphasic sleep or multiphasic sleep. Where people would sleep not in one period, what's called monophasic, but would actually sleep in two periods or even more. So in the Middle Ages, it's known that people would sleep for one. There'd be like the two sleep night. You'd sleep for one period. You'd wake up. You'd read a book. You'd talk with your spouse, and then you'd go sleep again for kind of the second part of the night. And that was popular. What changed that was basically also modern life. When we started getting artificial lighting and AC, that kind of made it very easy for us to fall asleep at the end of the day and wake up in the morning, because we could regulate our environments very easily. So it is possible to not to sleep in one block, but again, it's something I think also that requires you to do things regularly and not occasionally, because again, your body will get used to the pattern.
Sorry, another question. See, you're on a roll now, Yadid. You're on a roll. People are fascinated, clearly. We said this would invoke lots of thought, and it has. A question coming from Catherine. Some people seem to need much less sleep than others. Here we go. We're going into the sleep myths. Is that habitual or healthy? So we know Catherine's about to quote the famous Margaret Thatcher. She only needed apparently 5 hours sleep a night. So what are your thoughts around this, the difference that people need, and perhaps the myth around surviving on a lot less sleep?
So that's, I'd say that's what's called an excellent question. And the difference between a good question and an excellent question. A good question is a question I think I know how to answer, and maybe I'll give you a good answer. An excellent question is one that I've actually planned for and have in my slides. So here's the sad reality. There is a very rare collection of individuals who appear to survive on less than 6 hours of sleep, and they show minimal impairment. The explanation lies in genetics. So they have a specific, a subvariant of a gene that's different than most of us. And so most of us, however, will need that 7 to 9 hours of sleep in order not to be impaired. And so you may be part of the sleepless elite, but most of us aren't. And reality is actually, you may think, okay, I can get used to 6 hours of less of sleep because I tried it, right? And what actually is happening that you're now being accustomed to the effects of sleep deprivation. So you're not noticing your, lapse in judgment or your lessened performance, because now you've become accustomed to that. And so that's not a good thing either. So I wouldn't go without the recommended hours of sleep unless, maybe you've done a genetic analysis and you find that you're okay, or really you're one of those lucky few that you can function with 5 hours. But as I said, for most of us, that's not true. So again, we talked about this, about training your body to need less sleep. Not really. Now, daytime naps, we also talked about that, so I won't go into that. How long you sleep is all that matters. That's a myth, because it's not only how much time total you slept, but also the quality of sleep is a really important factor to consider. And that's very closely correlated with sleep continuity. So avoiding sleep disruptions. If you have fragmented sleep, marked by numerous awakenings, and that impedes your ability to move through the sleep cycles. And basically that means you're decreasing the time spent in each of those cycles, and they become less efficient, and the restorative properties of those cycles will be diminished. And so it's not only the length of time, the total length, but also the quality, and uninterrupted is very important. More sleep is always better. When I was a teenager, I thought that for sure. But actually, the research showed that there's a link between longer sleep durations and poorer health. So the risk of developing obesity and there are other medical conditions actually increases if we sleep significantly more than the recommended amount of time. And lastly, alcohol before bed improves sleep. So yes, you think that that nightcap is great. It knocks you straight out, right? Some of us, and that may be true. You'll fall asleep faster, but the quality of sleep will be diminished. there'll be more awakenings. You'll have less time in REM sleep, and that's because of the effect that the alcohol has on our body. It dehydrates us. We wake up thirsty in the middle of the night, etc., etc. So alcohol is not a solution to insomnia. I'm not a medical doctor, but this I know.
Well, that's completely changed my evening routine, Yadid. Thanks for that. That's I'm sorry to hear that, but hey ho. Before you move on, we've had another question from Christoph, going back to the sleep cycles. Christoph, rather than the myths, Christoph asks around what's a healthy ratio between REM, deep and light sleep, in addition to continuous uninterrupted sleep. Any thoughts on that?
Actually, if you go back to the slide, you can see that their average times that each of these stages last, and you can see that on average you could say that stage 2 and stage 3 are more or less equal, and that REM sleep is 20 to 25% of the night. Those are healthy ratios. Now, I suspect that some of this question is coming from, I have a sleep sensor and it's telling me that I only spent 5% in REM sleep or 2%. And my answer to that, I'd be very wary of sleep sensors. A lot of them have very poor accuracy. There are a few that there's research that shows that they are as accurate as a sleep lab. But most of them are not, and so I would not rely on those telling you how much you slept in each stage. And actually, if you wear 2 of those to bed, you'll see that they disagree mostly all the time. So the ground truth here is very is important. So I'd say if you really suspect you have issues, I'd go to a sleep lab and do a sleep study and find out if there are really issues.
Wonderful. Yadid, just to give a quick summary of the results that came in from all of the guests. So actually, I know you've kind of said here, so we've asked 2 questions: quality of sleep over the last week, just because it's, people are able to kind of determine probably over the last week than maybe over the last month with, a holiday period or, breaks and things like that. And on average, how many hours a night have you slept? Now, pretty fascinating here, I think, almost basically 25%, a quarter, are saying they have poor or very poor sleep. Then we got 70% saying average and good, only 6% saying very good. In terms of the hours, now this is a bit of a shocker. So we've got 12% with 5 hours or less. We got 70% in the 6 to 7 hour bracket. And then we've got only 18% saying 8 or 9. And I mean, given the kind of target that you were saying is around 7 to 8, and, obviously asking people to reflect and talk about the quality, that's how they feel, I guess, and maybe you'll talk about that as well. It's how you feel when you actually wake up, irrespective of how much sleep you've actually had. So I don't know if you can maybe comment on these results, maybe versus some of the other things that, studies that you've seen, or what this would actually mean for these unfortunate hospitality executives that are listening to this today, because they could really be in the 8 or 9 bracket.
Right. So it's 7 to 9 is a recommended number for adults. By the way, if you're clocking 6 or 7, I'm optimistic by nature, so I'd say I hope it's 7, and then you're kind of in the range. So that's okay. But as you mentioned, Jonathan, it's really also about how you feel. So the perceived quality of sleep. If we always talk about this. Some of these sensors give you a sleep score, and they say, oh, you slept 98%, but you wake up feeling terrible, so tired, like you had the worst night in the world. But you're saying, oh, the sensor told me I slept wonderfully, so it's probably okay. It doesn't work like that. In the end, it's all about how we feel. And if we feel good and we feel energized, then I'd say that's a very, very important aspect. And so again, we have to be very careful here, because as we said, it's very easy to get accustomed to kind of the diminished performance. You're now, there's the new normal. I'm less focused, and I'm kind of, my performance is at a lower level, and now I'm used to that. So I think it's okay, but it's not. So I'd really try and set my alarm. If you use a Apple, Apple phone, I would. They have a bedtime feature that reminds you to go to bed at a certain hour. I'd use that so that you can really make sure that you're getting enough hours of sleep, because you may not be actually.
No, I was just going to make a quick note about the pandemic. I mean, it would been interesting to see what these results would have been because to my mind, on the pandemic front, you've got people actually got longer to sleep in a sense because there's no commute, right? So people have more time. So in the sense that they could actually be sleeping for longer hours, but conversely, probably more incidents of heightened stress, which could then impact the quality of it. But it'd be interesting to kind of run this poll over time.
I think what's interesting about this in terms of the lack of sleep linked to performance is that it may, as you said about the diminishing aspect of performance, you may not even actually be too aware that your performance is diminishing. And I think that's something I'd like to explore as well around what have you seen with actual performance linked to lack of sleep. Maybe you've seen it in sports athletes. So is there a very clear distinction between lack of sleep and performance and better sleep and performance?
Yep. Maybe we can touch on athletics. I have quite a bit to say about that in a couple of slides. We'll touch on all of the athletics and athletics performance, because I have a fair amount to say.
Okay, wonderful, Yadid.
Let's get quickly by the interventions. And so how could we deal with sleep issues? So today, the first line of treatment really for people dealing with insomnia is CBTI, or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And that is it's a collection of techniques for changing, for behavior change, for dealing with bad behaviors that cause sleep issues, right? And so if you go to a psychiatrist or a sleep doctor, a psychologist, they'll most likely recommend CBTI as the first course to try and deal with persistent sleep issues. These techniques include things like cognitive restructuring. So those are attempts to change, unhelpful thoughts about sleep. So, that getting into bed and worrying about the day or about finances, it will teach you how to basically think about thinking those thoughts and how not to think those thoughts, right? The metacognition. Various behavioral interventions like relaxation training, stimulus control, sleep restriction, which basically talks about only spending time in bed that you will be sleeping in, and limiting the amount of time you will be in bed, so that you don't have much of an opportunity not to sleep if you're in bed just for 5 hours, right? And various other psychoeducational interventions. So CBTI is today, I'd say the first line of treatment, and there are actually a plethora of apps that can teach you CBTI. Some of them are, they have FDA clearance even, and some of them can even be prescribed. So, I think we've come a long way from the days of someone telling you, giving you a book, read it, and then learn CBTI. And now you have an app that's going to guide you through all of these techniques. And now I would just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about our Sleepbuds, which recently we launched. And Sleepbuds are, as the name suggests, they're buds that are designed for sleeping. They're really tiny. You can sleep on your side. They're wireless, so they have no wires. There's an app that controls the product, and so you have a variety of sounds that you can play with these buds. Things like there's naturescapes, so rain or a stream or the waves. There is various noise masking tracks, such as an airplane engine. Some people find that relaxing. A train. There's various relaxing melodies, tranquilities we call them, that are also have masking properties. So this library basically helps also mask out unwanted noise from a snoring spouse or noisy neighborhood or the street. And a lot of engineering went into developing this product. This product took years to develop because it's so hard to develop earbuds this small. They're tiny and that are comfortable to sleep in, right? That don't fall off out of your ear when you sleep. And so this kind of shows some of the technology that went into developing this. It starts even from the ear tip itself, the material that doesn't squeak when your pillow rubs against it. That's important. That's something we found in research. It has also the properties of passive noise occlusion. So the bud itself blocks out noise as well. The driver, that's the component that generates the audio, has to be very low powered because it has to last the entire night, right? And has to also generate the right dynamic range of frequencies. A radio that is, again, very, very power efficient. The battery, which again has to be small enough, has to be energy dense, but has to be safe because you have it in your ear all night, so that nothing bad will happen if there's a malfunction. So all of that went into developing this product, and we're passionate about details and about making sure we get it right, and that we manage to bring the right benefits of the technology to the end customer. And so we did a clinical study with University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus, and to clinically test these sleep buds. And what we found was that this was a study of 55 participants between 21 and 65 years old, and they all self-identified as light or moderate sleepers with self-reported difficulty falling or staying asleep due to environmental noise. And what we found was that all the participants found that the noise was blocked effectively, including snoring and urban noise. And 76% of the participants felt it was easier to stay asleep. And 8 out of 10 reported improved overall sleep quality. So, after we did this clinical study, we were sure that we actually had a benefit that, was measurable and that we could provide to our customers.
Yadid, I'm interested on your study around the area of the noise. We've talked a lot in this series about personalization, finding out what works for you. Don't just follow the crowd. But to that effect, did you find any trends when it came to noise blocking? Were there any trends that kind of one type of noise was preferable over the other, or certain people preferred certain music because of certain reasons? Was there any trends there?
So we're still doing a lot of research on that, but what I can say is that from what we've seen, it's very, very personal. There will be people who say the only thing that gets them to sleep is that sound of an airplane, right? Like when you're flying in the cabin, that kind of low frequency engine hum, and they love that sound. And others will say that it's just too distracting for them, and they like a campfire. So it's very personal. And it's funny how you'll hear from specific users who say, "Oh, I heard this noise and I kept focusing on the crackling of the fire and it distracted me and I couldn't fall asleep." Where others would say, "Oh, the campfire reminded me of when I was a child and I'd go camping and I'd always sleep so well next to the fire." And so it's also a very emotional thing of what those those sounds, what emotions they elicit. And so I could just say that it's I don't think we can say that there is, you know, a specific sound that works for everyone, but rather we're all very different, and we strive to have enough of a variety to really cater to the needs of everyone.
Yadid, I'd like to kind of bring this in. I think this is a wonderful solution, and it's obviously going to be hugely beneficial in terms of the world of hospitality. According to Matthew Walker from Why We Sleep, he was saying that humans in new environments, and he used the example, such as new hotel rooms. So in the first night when you're in a hotel, half the brain is sleeping lighter than the other half, because instinctively and genetically we are staying alert for danger. And actually it means overall we have roughly on our first night 1 to 2 hours potentially less sleep overall, which means actually it triggers what's essentially our fight or flight mechanisms. So we're actually more anxious, most likely. So we've got that really important business meeting, or we're meeting customers for the first time, we're meeting colleagues, we've got a workshop or whatever. Now I know this is the new environment, and I'll come back to that in a, that'll be hopefully a few months from now. But I think what's wonderful about this technology is it allows you to recreate almost an environment that you're comfortable with, even though you're in a new environment, and therefore hopefully will kind of suppress some of that so that you actually have a better night's sleep.
Exactly. And I actually have a hotel story, if I may. So, back in the days when I was pre-pandemic, when I was traveling a lot more, I travel, I think this was transatlantic, and got to the hotel, and the hotel had all the right things, right? The fancy pillow menu, and, and I was convinced that, boy, am I going to get a great night's sleep and be ready for that big meeting tomorrow. And so I go to bed and about to fall asleep, and then the mini fridge engines, the mini fridge motor starts working like crazy. And I think it was, something there was rattling anyway. I couldn't sleep. I tried to find, a way to disconnect it. I couldn't. So what did I do? I turned on the AC to try and mask out that noise. I think the thermostat wasn't really working well, and so I was boiling hot. There was no way to really cool the environment. And so I'm pretty miserable at that point. And then when I thought like nothing worse could happen, there was a light that started to flash from the smoke sensor. I think when the battery runs low, then there's this every few seconds, all the room became red. And so and you ask yourself, okay, it's a little thing, right? The mini fridge or the AC, and we talk about pillows and whatnot. And to be honest, I don't need a menu of pillows. I just need one good pillow. But I'd like a really quiet environment, and I'd like the AC to function because it's so important to get to sleep. So I guess that's my experience.
Yeah, I think, but it shows, I think, the importance of trying to recreate your own environment, right? As fast as possible. And I think that's the wonderful thing about what you've developed here. Just to go back to my previous question, Yadid, around performance. I know you've kind of dropped the slides now, but just for the audience as well, how careful do we need to be in terms of performance from what you've seen? Right.
So let's talk about performance. So we said that sleep and athletic performance, there's a strong tie there. Why? Well, it allows your heart to rest and the cells and the tissue to repair. It helps your body recover after physical exertion. Obviously, immune system, strengthen it, prevents illness. Mental state, as athletes, mental state is very important. So it helps learn new skills and retain memories, etc. And what the research has shown that athletes that, they did studies on groups of athletes, and they found that, those that did not sleep had inhibited ability when they were sleep deprived. They had decreased accuracy. They had quicker exhaustion, so they could, they had a lot less energy. They decreased reaction time, which is very important in athletics, but also important in our business life, right? We need to react quickly to things. We need to maintain a high level of energy. Difficulty in learning and decision making because the executive functions are impaired. Higher risk of injury. So I'd say, bad sleep equals bad athletics, but bad performance in general. And I'd say we're all athletes in some way, even though we're not professional athletes. Our life in general requires performance, and you have to be at your best to compete.
Thank you, Yadid.
Yadid, I've got another question. I wonder if I can jump in. I know we're coming to the close, and actually this question comes from Anna about waking up. So it feels like we're coming through our circadian rhythm. We're waking up again, and Anna asks, is there any information about waking people up, either with headphones or by an alarm? Waking up in general, is there any information on the impact of the quality of sleep that the way you wake up can have?
Yes. So, when you wake up is also important, because the problem with alarms is that they wake you up at the exact time that you set them for, and they do not take into account what is the sleep state that you're in. And so if it happens that the alarm rings when you're in deep sleep, then you will wake up very, very groggy. Vis-a-vis if the alarm rings that you're in one of the, you're in REM or another of the light sleep stages. So I'd say it's really important when you wake up, and part of the regularity of going to bed early so that you get enough hours before your alarm wakes up is part of that, making sure that the alarm doesn't wake you up in deep sleep, because you've had enough deep sleep cycles, and hopefully you even wake up before your alarm. That would be best, right? If you can actually get into a regular cycle where your body naturally wakes up and you don't use the alarm, and then of course you'll feel at your best.
We've got basically a couple of questions coming in, but I'm conscious that we've got literally 4 minutes left to the end of the session. And I think we could keep going here. So I'll just start doing a quick wrap up, but there is a very fast question maybe you'd like to answer. It's been up there a while. Does water contribute to a good or better night's sleep? Is it a myth? I guess that's drinking water rather than having a shower.
So again, it's yes and no. And the yes part is we sometimes, if we're dehydrated, then that obviously has a negative impact on your physiology in general. But we sometimes tend to wake up in the middle of the night because we're thirsty, right? And then we have disrupted sleep. The con side is if you now drink a few glasses of water before falling asleep, you're guaranteed to wake up because you need to go to the bathroom. And that's not good as well. And so I think what the general advice is to be well hydrated throughout the day, and don't drink all your water just before you're going to bed. Actually make sure to drink enough, throughout the day, and then by a certain time, depending on when you go to bed, but a few hours before, make sure that kind of you drink enough and don't drink anymore. And so then try to go to the restroom before you fall asleep. But hydration is really important. It's just when that's also important.
Okay.
I think age factors in there, I'm noticing as well. But
anyway. For sure. I can attest to that as well.
Yeah. Do we have time for one more question? There is another question, and it may have been covered slightly regarding Chris. Actually, just mentioned age, but it seems to be teenagers sleep more, older people sleep less. So when we're talking about 7 to 8 hours, is it actually is there an age specificity to that?
Yes, definitely. There is sleep in general. The number of hours we sleep is age specific. So, for example, babies need to sleep a lot more. Than your adult. Newborns need 14 to 17 hours. Infants need 12 to 15. School-age children in general need 9 to 11, right? And then teenagers need 8 to 10. So I'd say roughly overlapping with adults, but still on the end of that spectrum, it's 10 hours of sleep that they need. And so, and by the way, there are some people that are night owls and they function better in the night, and there are others that are morning people. A lot of that is determined also by genetics. And so sometimes we say, oh, you're lazy that you wake up so late. That's not true at all. Just some people are wired that way, that they function best at night and they can only go to sleep very, very late, and they need the morning time. They can't function if they have to wake up too early. So, and I guess some teens are also like that, but in general, teens need more sleep than adults.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yadid. So I'm just going to do a very quick wrap up now. Because we're on time, I would just like to say my kind of takeaways from this are, it's around environment. So really looking after the environment that you're in when you're preparing to go to sleep. Really look at your lights in terms of good lights, bad lights, and also look at your habits in terms of trying to create good habits around sleep. And also look at technology, and obviously your Bose Sleepbuds is an opportunity for people to kind of really enhance their existing environment, take it with them to new environments, or create the environment that they really want and need in order for better sleep. So I'd like to say a big thank you, Yadid. I'm going to hand over to John for our final close. Thank you very much, Yadid.
Indeed, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, that concludes today's session, and what a fascinating one. I think evidenced by the number of questions, the fact that you barely got through your slides, Yadid. We could talk about this topic for ages. So thank you so much to yourself for your fascinating insight, for your time that went into this. Thank you to co-host Jonathan Humphreys from HoCoSo and Chris Mumford from HoCoSo and Service Leadership. Thank you also to those of you that could join us today. Thank you so much. We're delighted you could be here to listen to that. As I said at the beginning, this will be available. This recording will be available afterwards in full as a podcast, and we will also produce an article on it as well, all available from the Hospitality Resilience Series website. So keep an eye out for that, also on our LinkedIn group, and hopefully join us next month for another insight into resilience. But once again, Yadid, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Until we speak to you in a month's time, we wish you all the very best.
Sleep well.
Bye.